Today we're talking about energy sources that we use to supply the energy that we want in our society that we talked about last time. Society is the tail that wags the energy dog, and society would like things to make life easier and more comfortable and more productive. But the laws of nature are such that if we want energy such as lighting and heating and cooling, we have to find it somewhere in this natural form. So today we're going to start on looking at the source of the energy that we use to supply society's wants and needs to making life better. And the first one that we'll talk about, well, as we mentioned last time, the energy in buildings, energy manufacturing, energy in transportation. So today we're talking about energy sources and where we get our energy from. First we're going to talk about hydrocarbon supplies, fossil fuels, and they're the primary supplier for our energy needs, and 20% of our total energy supplies come from coal, 26% comes from oil, and 36% comes from natural gas. Those are the three fossil fuels. They're hydrocarbons, they got hydrogen and carbon in them, and we'll see that in detail as we move forward. But you see that the other supplies that we use that are non-fossil fuels is nuclear, that is in the form of nuclear power plants, and that supplies about 10% of our total energy uses in society. And that actually energy form is coming from uranium. When we get to renewable, we have biomass, which is wood, corn, ethanol, etc., things that we grow. We have hydro dams that we generate a lot of electricity from our hydro plants. We have wind energy, that's our recent renewable energy form that's been rapidly developed. And then we have geothermal energy, in which we drill down in the earth, and in some cases we can bring up hot water or hot steam, that's a heat source, that we can use to drive our energy systems. And solar is about 0.2%. You can see, you hear a lot about solar, but it's actually makes a smaller contribution at this point than wind, and that's been because of economics. But economics of solar is looking better every year, and that number is growing rapidly, as we'll see later on. Here's the overall primary trend for all these energy sources that we're utilizing. It's a very busy slide. Let me just point out some details here. Number one, it looks at the energy production, and production rather than consumption. And I have a reason for that I'm showing production, as it'll become obvious later on. But this is the U.S. energy production by energy source that we use in this country to drive our society. And it shows it from 1950, and that was not long after World War II. And we were a relatively undeveloped nation from an economic viewpoint compared to what we are now, and our energy needs have grown considerably. Here's how it has grown from 1950 to 2012. You can see, starting at the top, the blue is natural gas. Natural gas was very low back here in 1950, and now we're getting more energy from natural gas than any other, looking at the most recent data. Coal always been, or not always, but certainly in recent history, has been the primary energy supplier for many years, and it's leveled off and has dropped. By the way, this drop in coal utilization, coal production right here, is tied to the recession. which we've seen is the economic impact of slower the economy means we use less energy. Here's crude oil, and again, this is the one that really becomes apparent that I'm showing energy production in this case and not energy use. Our oil production in this country actually peaked in about 1970, notice, and it has declined generally over time since then. And we now are down here where we brag a lot about how much our oil production has increased, which we see by this blip down here on the bottom right and on the right-hand side, because it has come up with fracking and other technologies that we have developed. But we're a long ways from producing as much oil as we did back in 1970 when oil was about $2 a barrel, which is about $8 a barrel in today's dollars. Nuclear has steadily risen along with, as we put in more and more nuclear power plants, we made them more reliable and are able to run them more. Biomass, which I categorized before, you can see how it's grown. And then we lump other renewables in there as a lump. One that we hadn't talked about, but we'll get to, and it's important to show, and that's NGPL. That stands for natural gas liquids. Natural gas liquids. Natural gas petroleum liquids in this case with a P. Sometimes it's just NGLs, natural gas liquids, or natural gas petroleum liquids. Those are liquids that come out with natural gas. And there are things like propane, butane, etc. But we'll talk about those more later, and it's important to separate those and start seeing that that's different than natural gas. So that's the overall trend of our energy use, that where we're getting that energy supply from. And it's a busy slide, but it's a lot of information on there to see how things have changed over time in our energy production in this country. And by the way, the only one that we aren't fairly independent on, and we produce essentially all that we use, is crude oil, and that's the one that we'll look at later. We import a lot of crude oil because our consumption has steadily risen, even though our peak is down from 1970. Our use has continually gone up. We'll talk about that more later. So this is the pie chart showing where we get our energy from today, and it's the same numbers I showed you before, but sometimes it's easier to think about here and see when we have it in a pie chart. Oil at 36%, natural gas at 26%, coal at 20%, nuclear at 9%, biomass at 5%, hydro at 3%, wind at a little over 1%, and solar at about 0.2. So that's where we're getting our energy from, is the big picture, and we'll look at each of those energy sources throughout the rest of the course. And first we'll be taking up coal and the fossil fuels. Thank you.